Good morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. This proceeding is being broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Board of Water and Power Commissioners, please say present for roll call. Commissioner KATZ.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady. Vice President RUIZ.
Present.
4 board members, a quorum is present. Madam President.
Thank you. First, just a housekeeping note. As we are all aware, Los Angeles is experiencing yet another COVID surge. As a result, we have requested that all people entering our boardroom be masked. And remain masked through the meeting. You are invited and welcome to remove your mask if you are speaking at a microphone. Security will clean the microphones between speakers. I appreciate everyone's compliance with this precaution. We are committed to getting through a safe and healthy as possible December, January, and look forward to moving into a lower tier sometime soon. But just wanted to make that note and to explain why the members of the dais are masked and why people who are entering have been asked to wear masks. Also, as just an opening the meeting, I'd like to draw your attention to a new member of our dais. I'm extremely excited to have the opportunity to welcome NURIT KATZ to the Board of Water Power Commissioners. For most people who know me, they know that I have a deep and sustaining loyalty to the university in which I was educated. For some people, it's their high school alma mater. For me, I started college when I was 17, so UCLA is really where I grew up, and I am extremely happy that NURIT is UCLA's first Chief Sustainability Officer, who brings a wealth of expertise to this board. She is also a graduate of the Anderson School of Management, the Luskin School of Public Policy, and has a bioengineering degree or something.
Environmental education
From the University of Humboldt. All I know is there's lots of science and math in her background, which makes her perhaps eminently more better suited to and more qualified to serve on this board than I was at the time that I took my seat. Welcome, and thank you for taking this position. I will invite other commissioners to welcome her to the dais, should you wish to do so, and certainly make time for a woman who was recognized as one of the top 100 business trailblazers by the school in 2015 to speak at the conclusion of our welcoming remarks. Vice President Ruiz.
Well, I would like to welcome you, and I'm so excited that we continue having an all-female board, especially this week. On Sunday, I had the opportunity to attend the swearing in of our new mayor, Mayor Bass. And so I feel like it's a really great time. I feel like this board provides a good balance with our general manager, and I have heard, this is the first time we're meeting, but I've heard nothing but good things about you. So welcome aboard, welcome to the team, and if there's anything I can do, I'm here to be of service. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and welcome, Nurit. We've known each other for a little while, and I'm really looking forward to working with you on some of the wonderful projects that the DWP has coming forward, like LA 100 and the Green New Deal and lots of other things where we engage. So thank you for I don't know, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very excited to work with this incredible board, and I've enjoyed collaborating with LADWP staff for many years in my role at UCLA, and I'm honored to join you all in this important work on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will move to general public comments.
Madam President, there is no public comment at this time. Public comment is now closed.
Terrific. We will go to a report or briefing from our general manager and chief engineer, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning to all of our board members, and welcome Commissioner KATZ. That's a nice title to that, a nice ring to it there. We look forward to having you on board here. And I just want to commit to you that the staff here will do everything we can to help you in your transition to this role. I know we spoke at LEHRER last Monday, and you said, gosh, there's so much to learn, but I think you probably know us better than you think you do, and you probably know certainly the things that we're all about. And with your background and expertise, we really look forward to working with you and having you help us contribute to the goals that we have set for us. So
Thank you.
So welcome. Really happy to have you here. I'd also like to just bring up a few quick things for the board that has gone on. We had a pretty busy week last couple of weeks. Last week we had our kickoff of the Equity Ambassadors as an effort by our DEI group. Robert Matteau and Andrew Kwok put together the program to directly engage representing employees from the different groups in the department so they can increase the reach of our DEI efforts and both get feedback from employees and take word back into the work areas, basically to extend their representation. So they had a very good kickoff meeting last week, and I think we're on a nice track there moving forward with that effort. We also last week, we co-hosted with LA City Plants a live webinar on how to keep your trees and landscape thriving during the drought. I think many of the board members have been to some of our press events with Mayor Garcetti in the last several months, and I think every single time the question of trees and the landscape and in the environment came up. Commissioner LEHRER was introduced the webinar. Thank you very much for doing that for us. And it's been a very important point to remind folks that they are supposed to and allowed to water their trees and keep their trees healthy, and certainly that as we reduce watering usage, that we do not want to lose the key aspects of our landscape, the trees, and how critical they are, not only for the environment, but also to reduce heat island effect and the other sorts of things. And so we do continue to plant trees, and I know Mayor Bass even yesterday mentioned to all the general managers the issue of increasing tree canopy in the city because there's so many areas of the town that do not have adequate tree canopy, which affects, of course, public health and air quality, shade, and everything very, very much so. I'd like to quickly turn over to Brian Wilbur, who will give us an update on how we did during the last storm with the power system. I think we had a lot of crews out. I think our folks did a fantastic job of responding. Brian, you want to give us some highlights?
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Yeah, on early Sunday morning, we went to a level 1 alert, which is essentially a light wind, heat, rain event when we have increased outages. We were pretty well prepared for it this weekend. We had crews set up to come in at midnight. We had additional crews that came in during the day on Sunday. So we were very well prepared. Our numbers never really got over 13,000 people out at any given time. By Monday morning, we had reduced that down to just a few outages to clean up. So it went very well for us. We were very well prepared. Like Marty said, I have to give a lot of thanks to the crews that actually came out, right? Working in the wind is tough. Working in the rain is tough. Working in the wind and rain is exceptionally difficult to pick up wire and to restore services. So the crews did a great job. We were able to knock this one out very quickly, and our numbers never really got very high. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Next Wednesday, December 21st, is marking the second time we'll have our winter solstice sunrise ceremony at Chatsworth Reservoir. I know President McCLAIN-HILL was there last year with us, along with the mayor and several council members. Vice President RUIZ is going to be there this year. I hope you're all able to attend. It's early at 7 in the morning at the far end of the valley. Chatsworth Reservoir is the city's only designated nature preserve. It was a water and power reservoir until it was taken out of service in about the 1960 or so for water quality, and then following that, seismic reasons, and has remained out of service. But it's a jewel that the department owns, but it's a jewel in the heart of the city, and it has a tremendous history in the Native American culture. We will have, we're partnering with the Fernandino Tataviam tribe, who will be there. They'll be doing ceremonial blessings. There'll be nature walks. We always have our Earth Day in the spring, and so a couple of years ago we started to want to look at other seasons as well, because the the site is different every time of the year. So I hope everyone can join. It's open to the public, so there's a great chance to be there. And so certainly I hope that you're able to attend, and as well as our employees and anyone in the public that wants to go. It'll be next Wednesday, the 21st, 7 in the morning at Chatsworth Reservoir.
And Marty, thank you so much for mentioning that, because I'm really excited about this and the partnership that we do have with the local tribe. And I got a chance to go out and visit the facility recently and do a walkthrough. And, you know, for the Native culture, celebrating the winter solstice is so important, because we celebrate around the seasons. And the new season coming in is something that is important to us. So thank you for bringing that up, and I'm really excited about this event.
Good. Well, thank you. It's a nice event, and you know, our folks, our crews do a very good job of protecting the artifacts and such at the site. So we take that responsibility very seriously. So we look forward to everybody being there as much as possible. I'd like to turn over to Anselmo. He'd like to give us an update on where we are with water supply and what these storms meant to us, as well as introduce some new members of his management team.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Marty. I'll first start with the update on the water supply, and then I will introduce some of the new key members of my executive staff. So from a water supply perspective, there's actually quite a bit of information. As you know, the water year starts in October. The first couple of months were pretty dry, but in the month of December, we've seen quite a bit of precipitation, which is really welcome, obviously. So we're excited to see that, but we're not getting too overly excited, since we know that last year we also had a really wet December, and unfortunately we had really dry January to March. And we want to make sure that we don't have a repeat of that. But you probably also heard that recently the Department of Water Resources announced the initial allocation from the State Water Project. That initial allocation is 5%. That's better than last year when it was 0. But still, we're not talking about a lot of water. That's approximately 95,000 acre-feet of water that will be available to the Metropolitan Water District for its member agencies. One of the things that I also wanted to point out is that because of that, we are going to still require human health and service or human health and safety supplies, which means the state's going to be loaning Metropolitan Water District a certain amount of water to provide for the basic needs. So the 6 member agencies that are currently under the emergency conservation order by Metropolitan will continue to get the health and safety allocations. As you know, we have been basically on a volumetric budget since the month of June. I'm really happy to report that we have been able to stay within the budget that has been given to us by the Metropolitan Water District. Now, as you know, when we moved to that budget, we also went to the third level of our water conservation ordinance, which limits the watering to 2 days a week. And Angelinos have been doing a really good job in holding to that. At today's Metropolitan Board, there's going to be an item that's going to be considered for adoption, which is a resolution to reaffirm the regional drought emergency. But they're also going to be calling on all 26 member agencies to reduce the use from the State Water Project as well as the Colorado River Aqueduct. So this is basically setting the stage for potentially having a region-wide water supply allocation for the entire metropolitan service area. That's not happening today. They're just setting it up, but it could happen in 2023 as a result of the dire situation in the State Water Project as well as the Colorado River itself. Locally, we've seen a few storms, which has been great. As of the second to last storm, we have been able to collect around 5,000 acre-feet of water for stormwater capture purposes and be able to percolate that back into the ground. This is part of our strategy in being able to capture and reuse as much water as possible. Like I mentioned before, our customers continue to not waste water. Our gallons per person per day is a little less than 109. When we started this, we were around 112. We actually are less than 109. So we're certainly moving in the right direction. Also, as you know, we recently increased our turf rebate from $3 to $5. And I'm happy to report that we've seen a 30% increase in the number of applications as well since we did that. So certainly the public is responding to the increased rebate that we're offering. We also rolled out our smart home water monitoring device, which we call the Flume. And we had a soft opening on that in July. And there was a mayor's press event in late September. Since then, we have distributed over 9,000, actually 9,300 devices. So certainly this is being well received by the public, and it's going to help us manage our demands even better. And then also we reinstated the residential recycled water fill stations, and I'm happy to let you know that we have seen a tenfold increase in the number of customers and the amount of water that we provided compared to the last drought when we did this. So certainly the program has been very successful. We are evaluating putting a pause in it during the next couple of months because of the winter, and then restarting it in the springtime. But it's been extremely successful up to now. That's my update on the water supply situation. Commissioner?
So I want to go back to what you were talking about with a Metropolitan Water District and how they are considering action today, or setting it up for action. So what does that mean to us? I mean, I know there's a lot of agencies involved, but what does that mean to us at DWP?
Well, we already are under a water conservation ordinance. We already have a budget that's been given to us. So to us, it's probably not going to be any different. It's going to be for the other 20 member agencies that are currently not under a water supply allocation. That will be potentially, if the Metropolitan Board votes on that sometime next year, they will too be put on some kind of volumetric budget, or the 1 day a week requirement, which are the two options that we currently have. LADWP chose to go with the volumetric budget. And what's going to happen is potentially the other 20 member agencies will be asked to comply with one form or the other of that water supply and conservation program.
So for us, we're not going to see a lot of changes because we're already doing it.
We don't, correct. We're already doing it along with the other 5 member agencies that are part of the state water dependent areas.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to do, Commissioners, I wanted to just announce some recent promotions that are, I think, key for the water system. I first wanted to start with Mr. John Cox. John, if you don't mind standing up. John Cox is our newly appointed General Superintendent in the Water Distribution Division. So he will oversee all the water yards that we have throughout the city. Those yards have superintendents, and John will be overseeing all of them. So it's a key appointment for us there. As you know, the men and women in the Water Distribution Division do an excellent job in maintaining our system and keeping the water flowing. Also, what I wanted to do is introduce some new managing water utility engineers. This is the management level positions on the engineering side. And most of them are here today, so I want to take the opportunity to introduce them, mainly because you're going to be seeing more of them with these board meetings when they come to report on a variety of items. I first wanted to start with Kajal Parbu. Kajal, if you don't mind standing up. Kajal is a managing water engineer in the Water Quality Division, and I'm sure he's going to do an excellent job there. Also, we have Sophia Marcus. Sophia Marcus is going to be in our Water Distribution Division, where she's going to be in charge of our training group in distribution. Thank you, Sophia. Next, we have Ehineman Nwani. There she is. Ehineman Nwani is going to be also in the Water Distribution Division, where she's going to be overseeing infrastructure programs and resiliency group. Ehineman has a lot of experience in the water operations, and now she gets to move over to water distribution. Next up is Mr. Earl Moosberger. Earl is going to be also moving to the Water Distribution Division, where he is going to be overseeing construction support and procurement. Earl has extensive experience in our Water Operations Division up in the aqueduct. He was the engineer up in Bishop, so he's got great experience that he's bringing now to water distribution. Next up is Helen Olivares. Helen Olivares is our manager of property management in the water operations division. That's the group that she was as a full engineer. Now she takes over as a manager. Helen has extensive experience dealing with the community and all the challenges of all the properties that we have throughout the city. And I know she's going to do a great job there. Next, Jesus Gonzalez. And it probably looks familiar. Jesus was here at the last meeting speaking to you about some issues regarding the Water Resources Division. Jesus is going to be overseeing the Recycled Water and Groundwater Resource Group, a group that he has been working in for a while and has extensive experience. And I think, if you recall from the last meeting, he's very knowledgeable. Thank you, Jesus. And the last person who unfortunately couldn't be here today is Elisa Reynolds. Elisa is going to be going to the Water Operations Division, where she's going to be in charge of our treatment operations support services. So basically, that's the engineering side of our treatment operations group. Those are the folks that treat all the water that is served to the citizens and the residents here in LA. And that's it. Thank you, Marty.
I like the fact that it's a nice balance of men and women, so thank you for that.
These are the best and brightest from the group, so I'm very proud of all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Samo. And you know, it's funny, as just a side note, as testimony that the programs that we have work, Helen used to be a student engineer in our group when I was a supervisor many years ago. So the programs we do to recruit and train and retain people do result in some very good results. So it was great. Lastly, I just, as the year comes to a close, I just wanted to thank the board for all of its support and work this year. This has to be the hardest working board on behalf of the department and the different programs that I can remember. I know that all of the commissioners have played such a key role in the work that we do and really had a hand in everything and taking such a leadership role. And especially, I remember just a month ago, we had the women's seminar and just initiatives like that, working on employee issues, family issues. The board has really opened our eyes and my eyes in terms of, really dealing not only with serving water and power, but all the aspects of the business, the nuanced aspects, as well as, the proper, care and welfare of our employees. And so I appreciate your guidance and leadership, and certainly the time and participation that you've put into everything this last year. And I want to thank all of our employees for the work they've done. We've really moved the needle this last year. And someone mentioned drought and conservation, and through the efforts of our team, we've had the lowest water use of any summer on record since we've kept records. We've managed to continue to increase our renewable energy portfolio, a tremendous amount of work moving projects forward, and all that at the same time, coming to work, dealing with pandemic issues, getting ourselves as closely back to normal as we can. And our field crews have really done a stellar job, really kept up through all this with their infrastructure goals, including the increasing demand for infrastructure with all the construction going on in the city. So we have a lot of challenges in the year ahead, a lot of goals to accomplish, but I'm very proud of the organization and the work that we've done, and so proud of our employees. And I want to thank everyone and hope that everyone has a wonderful holiday season, and I'll be ready to hit it real hard next year and start fresh. And I want to thank my friend Aaron for joining us, my early Christmas presents. They could help me share the load and really be my right hand and really help move the agency forward and to tackle all these goals that we have. And it's nice to have someone with like mindset and like experience to really help us move the department ahead. So thank you very much, and appreciate the opportunity to give you a report.
Thank you, Marty, and I appreciate your comments, both as it relates to the role of the board and in particular as it relates to the staff of this tremendous organization. I guess this is our last board meeting of the year, and I too want to join in saying thank you to the employees on behalf of the board for all of your efforts over the course of this year, on behalf of this department and more broadly on behalf of the city. Also, as a board member and the board president, I just want to say it is our distinct honor and pleasure to be part of this organization. It is without question, one of the most remarkable institutions in the country, and is critical to the functioning of the city. And I could not be more pleased than to have the opportunity to work with you all. Vice President Ruiz noted the arrival of a new leader of our city. I think many of us had the privilege and pleasure of attending the inaugural on Sunday, and look forward to joining our mayor in addressing the crisis of our time, of our generation, and are incredibly excited to know that this department can play a leadership role in facilitating the development of new low-income and affordable housing. I know that over the course of the last, 5 years or so, DWP has been increasingly challenged to step up to the city's new challenges and to meet the city's needs as we take on this new millennia. We're still very early in 2022, very early in really our history as a city. This department has been critical every step of the way. Los Angeles is Los Angeles because of the Department of Water and Power. And as we look forward, we should all take pride in knowing that in meeting climate change and ensuring both a reliable and safe and environmentally conscious supply of both water and power, this department is going to make that possible. And as we seek to make a more affordable, more just, and more equitable city, this department has a significant role. And as it relates to development, we continue to be very central in the intersection of that process, and looking forward and thinking about how we contribute to bringing shelter to the unhoused in the city. We have a critical role, in what I know and what gives me so much hope is that every time DWP is called upon to step up and perform, it finds a way to do so. And that is largely because of the people in this room and the spirit and the pride and the diligence of the people all across this department, all across the city, and all across its service territory. So thank you, and I hope that everyone has a very safe and enjoyable holiday, however you choose to spend it, and whatever holidays you celebrate. Look forward to seeing everyone in the new year. And
Madam President, if I
yes,
might.
ma'am.
So it is the last meeting of the year, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, President McCLAIN-HILL, for your leadership. But prior to coming to this board, I didn't really know you, but I've gotten to know you over the last 6 months. And when I think of you, it's like you're intelligent, you're hardworking, you're no nonsense, and you get it. And so to have this partnership with you really means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And before I, descend into sentiment that is way more than any of us should have to endure, I'm going to return to the meeting and look to introduction of motions, of which I'm not aware of any at this point. Dr. Pickle, do you have comments at this time that you would like to provide, or
No special items this time. If questions arise as we go through the discussion, I'm happy to comment on certain items.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Board Secretary, anything with respect to neighborhood councils?
No community impact statements were received.
All right, terrific. Then we will move to items recommended for approval. And before taking up items L1 through 15, I'd like to remove items for special consideration. That would be item 2, items 4 and 5, and item 7. With those exceptions, I am prepared to entertain a motion for approval of items 1, 3, 6, and 8 through 15. Is there a motion?
So move.
I'll second. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Katz,
I approve, or yes.
Commissioner LEHRER,
Yes.
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ,
Aye.
4
Aye.
ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific. Thank you very much. We will now move to management reports. So that would be item L1. I'm sorry, it's item I1. So presentation regarding strategic transmission plan update.
Brian, I'll turn it over to your folks there.
All right. Commissioners, today we are bringing forth our strategic transmission plan based on the presentations we've had all year long, starting with our power system reliability plan, our strategic long-term resource plan, our integrated human resource plan, and soon to come our equity strategy plan. So this is one of the pieces that will affect the rates and essentially give us our direction on how we're moving forward with the LA 100. So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Simon Zudu. He is our Director for Transmission Planning, Regulatory, and Innovation Division. Simon?
Happy to see the group that's setting the bar and presentations at the table once again, so no pressure.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're happy to be here. I would like to introduce my co-presenter, Dennis Obiang, who is a manager of transmission planning for LADWP. This presentation is to provide a final update on our DWP's strategic transmission plan. The purpose of the strategic transmission plan is to provide a roadmap, a blueprint, or a framework for DWP's long-term grid requirements in the next 20 years. It's a longer horizon to help maintain our grid reliability and operational flexibility, and to significantly improve the resiliency of the grid, and to increase the import capability of renewable resources and clean resources from faraway places, and to specifically meet our future impending load growth, and to be able to support that and all the load growth and demand for electricity that would be necessitated as a result of the electrification of the transportation sector. So to provide some background, LADWP owns and operates a vast 4,000-mile transmission system traversing in 5 different states. It constitutes about 24% of the state of California's transmission assets. So we are looking at a very vast system that we need to improve and upgrade to meet the future needs. And DWP's transmission planning process is governed by federal regulations enforced by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So today's discussion is a continuation, as Brian mentioned, of our preliminary presentation back in June, where we reviewed the responsibilities and role and responsibilities of the transmission planning group. And we also discussed DWP's 10-year transmission assessment process in detail, which is a very highly technical and a federally mandated modeling and analysis that we need to perform of our transmission system, coupled with a very robust stakeholder process and its outcomes. In essence, we scan the entire DWP's transmission system every year to identify any deficiencies within the system and to prescribe some requirements or required improvements that need to take place. So the idea here is to improve the capacity and the capability of the transmission system to make sure that we meet the demand that we have currently and in the coming 10 years. The outcome of the transmission process, as discussed back in June, is the authorization of transmission projects. Every transmission project within LADWP starts with transmission planning. And we take this responsibility very seriously. Next slide. Next slide. So based on this responsibility, currently we have approximately 34 transmission-related projects that are in the pipeline. These are all projects that are scheduled to be completed by 2030. They will help us advance our renewable strides, as well as meeting the demands for the next 8 years. These projects are closely monitored on a biweekly basis to make sure that the necessary support and attention is provided to these projects. Next slide, please. Here you would see on this screen the breakdown of the projects that we have between now and 2030. The breakdown shows that out of the 34, 12 of the projects are overhead transmission projects. Most of them are upgrade of the current right-of-ways with maintaining the same current right-of-ways and upgrading the capacity of the transmission lines. We have 6 underground cable projects, as well as 16 projects within electrical substations that would help the transmission system. Over the past few years, you may have heard of the 10 non-NURIT projects within LADWP. They are all identified in asterisk on this slide. This is to identify that all 10 projects, the NURIT projects, are part of the 34 projects that we are undertaking at this point. The key takeaway for today's presentation is knowing that development of transmission assets is a long-term proposition. It's a long lead item. It takes a very long time to develop transmission assets. And we are faced with the reality that electrification, especially in the transportation sector, is going to play a big part in increasing our load growth. So we need to address that, and the transmission system should be available and meet that demand. So based on these factors, we have determined the current 10-year transmission plan that we do on a yearly basis not to be able to sufficiently support and inform what we need to do over the next 15, 20 years. And that's the reason why we're doing a strategic transmission plan to address and plan for a longer time horizon. It's necessary to have a strategic transmission plan to manage our risks. There will be risks, just like any other projects, but we are identifying and managing those risks in advance so that we can mitigate them. We can lay the roadmap and the foundation where we can collaborate with other agencies, both at the federal level and at the state level, and with other utilities and balancing authorities, on how we can accelerate the achievement of these results and to ensure that we meet our future demands. Our goal here is to maintain the same level of reliability we have and to increase operational flexibility of the system. So I'll pause here and I'll pass it on to Dennis Obiang to further discuss our update on a strategic transmission plan. Dennis.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, Madam President. Good morning, board members. As mentioned by Simon, this is just an update of what we've done. We want to give you a little bit of the conclusion of the study that started in June when we first presented. What I would do, I would spend a little bit of time to go back to what we discussed last time so that by the time we go to the findings, you kind of understand where we're coming from. I think as part of the background that we discussed last time, we mentioned that the strategic transmission plan is truly to maintain the system reliability, but also to plan for anticipated load growth. And that is going to happen regardless of what we do. It's happening as of now, including water systems. They have their load growth that we have to account for. and also make a strategic long-term resource plan achievable. So those are the plan. In addition to that, we also want to ensure that our strategic transmission plan is in alignment with the federal government various initiatives in terms of bringing more transmission into the system. We know that we want to have more collaboration between utility and Department of Energy, collaboration between utility and balancing authority area for inter-regional projects that can benefit various regions. We also want to have a collaboration between utility and developers. They have expertise in developing transmission assets. So those are the foundation of our planning going forward. One thing I want to remind the team again is that last time we talked about the state of DWP transmission system. Shown here is a representation of that state. DWP transmission system is basically composed of 3 major corridors bringing power from the northern side to the city of Los Angeles. The bubbles simply represent the city of Los Angeles and the thermal generation inside of it. One clarification, the bubble is not a geographic representation of a system, but rather an illustrative one. So you can see we have 3 major corridors on the north, the Pacific DC entity. Last time we talked about the fact that it's underutilized because we don't have resource on the other side. And then we mentioned the Barron Ridge transmission system, which has significant amount of renewable energy portfolio. And we are concerned that if that path is suddenly lost, it will cause a security concern between DWP and CAISO. And third, we have one of the major corridors that DWP used to import renewable energy and bring energy into the city of Los Angeles is called the Vic to LA path, basically referring to Victorville substation and LA system path. And that path is composed of 5 major transmission lines. And that path is constrained today. There is no more capacity to bring more renewable into the city of Los Angeles. So in addition to all of those constraints, in basin inside the system, we also have limited capacity, and we have to do something about it to ensure that power gets distributed into the city of Los Angeles once we bring it from far away. Collectively, these are the reasons why we feel like we must do something to improve this system that is constrained today. In addition to what Simon mentioned, the system is, we use a 10-year plan approach is not enough to look into the future to inform the transmission system. Think of it. If it takes 12 years to build a transmission system and I'm planning for 10 years, I don't have enough visibility. But if I plan for 20 years, building for 12 years, I get to cover more ground than what we're doing today. So what do we need? We need a strategic transmission plan that ensures that we expand existing capacity, meet anticipated load growth, and develop an actionable plan. The key message here, this is an actionable plan. It's not something we continue to study and leave it on a shelf, but this is something we want to inform the board so that we embark on that journey to start developing those projects. One thing I'm going to share with you next is that what happens if we are faced with weather extremities? The 3 corridors you see on top there, PDCI, Barron Ridge, Vic to LA path. What happens if they're faced with wildfire? Well, that happened in October 2019. This path was threatened by wildfire. You can see earlier, before that, the capacity for the import capabilities nearly 6,000 when all of those transmission lines are operating. And then when you add the in-basin generation, it's 938, we can meet demand by 68, almost 6,900 megawatt. And this is our current state of the system today. Now, what happens if those lines are threatened by wildfire? It reduces our import capability severely, as it was the case in October 2019. Remember, October, this is not summer or spring where our load is very high. So when that happened, our capacity was reduced. We lost the PDCI, we lost Barron Ridge area, we lost 2 out of the 5 that compose of Vic to LA path, and we were left with 24, almost 2,400 of net capacity. We got lucky because it was October. If it was summer, we wouldn't be there. So this is a signal for us to think that as we plan for the system, we can no longer disregard those events because they will come again and again. So we're taking that into consideration as part of our planning. Last time we also discussed where we can find renewable energy resources. We show you this map before. We know where nature put those renewable resources. This is no secret. We know where the winds are. Wyoming wind, we know where it is. We know where New Mexico wind. When you go to the northeast, we know where solar and geothermal resources are from Nevada to Imperial Valley. We also know California has a lot of solar. These are the renewable energy we're trying to acquire or trying to get access to. We know where they are. The key for us is that how do we plan to get access to them, including offshore wind, if that become eventuality. Lastly, last time we also talked about the foundation of our strategic transmission plan. We talked about we need to have geographic diversity of our resources. What does that mean? It means that unfavorable weather condition in one area should not jeopardize resource on the other area. So because as a utility, we need to make sure we meet demand 24/7. And also we want to ensure we promote operational flexibility. What does that mean? In the event of wildfire we saw earlier, do we have enough corridor to bring renewable resource into our system? We got lucky because it wasn't summer, but next time it won't be this case. So we have to plan for that. And third, we also need to provide the interconnection roadmap. There are a lot of developers out there that are struggling to see where they can connect resources. Where are the transmission? Where are we building transmission? When they know where transmission is coming, they get to plan for those resources. And DDP benefit how? Because we get to compete. They get to compete for our project, and we benefit for low cost. And lastly, we want to ensure that the plan is to reduce both long-term costs and risk. It is important. These are major project we're trying to build. We need to manage the cost and also the risk that Simon talked about here earlier. Collectively, these are the foundation of a strategic transmission plan. Now that I've given you this background, let me walk you through the methodology we used to develop the plan. We did a lot of analysis. This is one of the complex studies I ever did. I mean, very complex. The first part is taking into consideration SLTRP scenario for the resources. What we asked ourselves, how can we optimize the existing asset? So we did a lot of permutation. We move resource around. If I bring wind in New Mexico and move it to Wyoming and move it somewhere else, what does that give me for transmission capacity? We try many permutation to see what is the best option of the transmission system that we can use today. And next, we also took into consideration our load growth. But one thing I want to mention as a transmission planner, I cannot get it wrong. If I cannot sit here today and tell you that I know the load growth rate in 2030, 2045, it will be completely a lie. All I can do is an estimate, but more importantly, I need to take into consideration an uncertainty level on top of that estimate to ensure that I am right. I'd rather be overestimating such that even though I have extra capacity, I can always sell it on an open access transmission tariff according to federal regulation, but I cannot underestimate because it takes 12 years. Can you imagine underestimated 12 years later, I still don't have capacity? That can be. So we took a look at that, and then we start to play with the system, and we found a bunch of solutions in terms of transmission asset that can solve all of those problems. So that's the middle part in green. Once we have a candidate transmission system that can solve this puzzle, we then go through a bunch of feasibility assessment. Those are feasibility assessment the Federal Regulatory Commission use and is industry standard. First, we look at operational reliability. To what extent the asset can operate properly without causing problem into existing asset. Second, what about economics? We want to look at the performance of the asset before we even construct it. What does that mean? To what extent the asset can reduce congestion? To what extent the asset can promote bringing more renewable energy into our system? To what extent the amortized cost of the asset, when we look into the overall benefit, is providing more benefit for the city of Los Angeles. The third item that we look into, transmission development risk. Some of those transmission have to go to desert area, and sometimes we'll have to go to the underwater system like the marine cable. To what extent there are risks? What kind of risks are we facing if we use those paths? Environmental risk. The environmental risk here, we look into to what extent the resource, the transmission we are building, minimize the use of fossil fuel to create more emission. So it has to do with the way we run our system, the way we dispatch our resource. If we dispatch it right, it will reduce emission. And lastly, although not important to transmission, but very important for the plan we do, is to understand the renewable development risk. For example, offshore wind, is it going to be available? If offshore wind is available, to what extent that capacity, how much can I get out of it? Same thing geothermal. Is geothermal going to be available? Geothermal is highly demanded, but it's a long process to get capacity from geothermal. How much can I get out of it? Is it worth it to build transmission to reach geothermal? These are the risks that we plan, that we took into consideration as part of this methodology. When we came in June 2014 for the first time when we introduced this subject, the dotted lines indicate all of the analysis we did. Analysis outside of the dotted line was not yet performed. And as a result of those analyses, we showcase with you all those are the candidate transmission system that can help solve that puzzle. We talked about 6 projects. We talked about upgrading the existing 287 corridor. We talked about new corridor heading east. We talked about increasing utilization of the PDCI, the yellow one. The yellow one is yellow because it does not increase capacity, but we were concerned that we're not utilizing it. We wanted to see to what extent we can increase utilization of that capacity. And D, we talk about diverse paths in terms of Barren Ridge. The Barren Ridge area is saturated. We want to find another way out of it. And E, what about submarine cable, an alternative path? And F, upgrading IPP system to ensure we can bring more renewable from Utah area. These are the candidates, it's a potential transmission system that came out of that preliminary analysis. Now, we have done all of the analysis, and today we want to share you what are the findings after we've done this. Before I go there, I want to mention a little bit of quick observation when we done the analysis. 4 items. We did realize that we have significant risks into our system today. One of them, I talked about it, load growth is a risk because if we don't get it right, we will not be able to meet demand. That's something we're finding out. The second risk is the operating risk. And right now we're finding out that our system is highly constrained, providing limited operation for our load dispatcher to maneuver when things are going wrong. And on top of that, when we do system upgrade, we cannot give outage window because we don't have a lot of flexibility. Third, resiliency risk. We talked about Saddle Ranch fire earlier. That is something we have to take into consideration. We know that the environment is not getting better. We will experience more wildfire. We got to plan for that. And lastly, congestion and constraint. When we looked into our permutation, moving resources around, we're finding out not only our system is constrained, but our neighboring system is also constrained. They too are struggling to bring resource to the native system. So how do we ensure that we hedge against, or we basically get ahead of the constraint by planning for DWP so that by the time the rest of the utility wake up, we will not have to compete for the same path. So these are the 4 things that we noticed as part of the transmission study that we did. But more importantly, load growth is going to be a determining factor, and load growth has to be taken care of. As a result of this analysis, we came up with 2 staging approach. We cannot do everything at once. We have to do one step at a time. So stage 1 is starting from 2022 all the way to 2020, 30, 2035. It will basically address expanding existing capacity to increase renewable energy, but more importantly, supporting load growth that is starting to happen now. And the second stage, starting from 2030 all the way to 2045, it will continue to support anticipated load growth because from 2030 and up, the load will continue to grow, and we have to start planning for that as well. So today, I'm not going to discuss stage 2 because stage 2 needs additional analysis, but I'm rather going to show you funding for stage 1. Stage 1 plan. First, we want to ensure that we take advantage of the STS IPP system. we would like to increase that capacity because that's an existing asset that has served us well over the years, and that asset is connecting to major corridors, and we want to increase that capacity. Increasing that capacity will ensure that we can bring more renewable energy and also increase the utilization of the system. If we don't make it, we have to find alternative paths to ensure that we take advantage of that asset. The second project that we want to talk about that is very positive is the Eastern Corridor. That asset is basically going to bring resource from the eastern end, going from New Mexico, maybe Arizona, going through Imperial Valley. We made the strategic move that solar is everywhere, but two resources are not everywhere. Wind and geothermal are not everywhere. And that's what we're doing here. We're looking at wind and geothermal, and we will pick up solar along the way. So that's a good asset, and it will add more injection to the southern end of the transmission. Earlier, when I showed you the bubble, you saw a lot of air on top, but there were no air at the bottom. This one is starting to inject air at the bottom so that we balance that system.
So the Eastern Corridor does not exist today?
It does not exist today. Last, marine cable. This is going to be a new endeavor for DWP. We don't have such system.
The Eastern Corridor,
Yes.
that's going to pick up IID? Or are you going into, what are you picking up? You're trying to get geothermal. Is that what you're trying to get?
Yes, basically the Eastern Corridor is recognizing that earlier when I showed the map of the resource, we have wind, solar, and geothermal. The only resource that was abundant is solar. So we figured out, well, so you can pick up solar anywhere. The only two resources that we have to find, wind and geothermal. So this Eastern Corridor is designed to pick up some wind on the eastern side of the system, and then maybe go through Imperial Valley and pick up geothermal if practical. And along the line, we can also pick up solar and integrate that with the system and injecting all of that from the south end of the system.
And how far does the Eastern Corridor go?
I think right now we think the Eastern Corridor should go all the way to Arizona and Mexico, New Mexico.
Thank you.
So, you know, the plentiful nature of the geothermal and IID has been known for some time, and it's been a transmission constraint
That's correct.
that's really not enabled it to come to the closer to the basin. This is a big concept,
Yes.
and a very big expense too. So how do you balance that amongst the others? Like, how do you weigh? Will it just exclusively be a cost-benefit analysis?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I think one of the key principles that we talked about, DWP cannot do it alone. We need to do a collaboration here. The reason for collaboration is twofold: reduce costs and spread the risk. Here we have potential collaborators that are out there. We're already in discussion, but we haven't finalized the understanding, because through collaboration, it creates a sense of a group of utility working together to accomplish this transmission system. I can't name them now because we haven't reached a deal. So it's really through collaboration. And later, when I'm going to talk about the Department of Energy assessment as well, you will find that it's consistent with their own finding as well. So to your question, collaboration is a major piece to it to reduce costs and risk.
Okay. Good.
And lastly, marine cables. This one is an alternative, no land. If fire, something is burning, we don't think cable will burn. So that's why we're using this approach to bring more resources from either offshore wind or inland solar, and then bring it back to in-basin. And you will see when we're going to go to the next slide how those systems connect with the previous system. This is stage one build-out, 3 projects. 1, existing STS upgrade, no new corridor. The second is the Eastern Corridor, which will bring resource from wind, solar, geothermal from the east into in-basin. And then marine cable to bring offshore wind and or solar inland and inject into the system. I want to stop here for a minute and go back in mind when we discussed the bubble diagram. The arrow on top, there were nothing injecting from the south. this, now we have thing injecting on top and thing injecting at the bottom, balancing our system fairly. That is a secure system. That is a reliable system, and that's what we're shooting for. It's not just in a business of meeting demand. Remember, we talked about it. It's also looking at those 4 principles. We need to ensure we have diversity of resources. We have a little bit of diversity here. We need to provide operational flexibility. If things burn, we can use marine cable any other place. We also need to incent developer to know where the transmission are coming so we can get better rate for that resources. We also need to ensure that we reduce costs, to your point, by collaborating and also by ensuring the risks are reduced. So these are the build-out of our system going forward. Now, with collaboration, I just talked about it earlier. One thing I want to note is that the Department of Energy is also doing its own study called a National Transmission Planning Study. We are partly involved in it. And guess what the scope of the study is to find a way to decarbonize the entire United States grid. And they broke it up in region, the Western, the East, the South. So DWP is part of the stakeholder providing input and providing comments to ensure that we have a plan. The grid, the study is also recognized that across the Western grid, there is a need for load growth that is coming. How do we plan for that? How do we secure that demand with renewable energy? One thing we noticed that the entire and the national grid plan, the study that they did, is the entire Western grid that we have a concern of. The reason is our concern because the rest of the grid is disconnected from DC system. If we go dark, it's going to be the entire Western grid that goes dark with us. So that's why we want to pay attention to that piece. And that study took a look at that Western grid where DWP belong. The most important part of the analysis is that findings from the National Transmission Study is consistent with DWP's STP study. They talk about more transmission have to be built. They talk about the need for collaboration among utilities to do it. And we're using that same framework for us to ensure that we meet our demand for the future. Now, with respect to next step, I think we will continue to collaborate with other utilities because we want to accelerate those projects. We will continue to promote geographic diversity, resource diversity, and also reliability, resiliency of a grid. We will continue to update the board of the project where we're going. But one thing I want to note is that this project, we are moving forward, starting the planning, understanding what that is, discussing with a neighboring utility, discussing with a potential partner, because through collaboration, we will reduce risk and cost. Before I end this presentation, just on experience-wise, the last time I came here on June 14, we have received numerous phone calls from strangers. We don't even know how they got our numbers, but that's beside the point. Basically, encouraging us about what we did here. They were shocked to see the plan that we presented. They were shocked to see the kind of analysis that went on. As a result of that first meeting, we got invited to a planning agency to explain to other utilities how we did this. And what are the challenges we face? What kind of modeling we use? What kind of tool we use? Through that interaction, I suddenly realized that DWP is leading again. And that has always been something that the department has done. I'm so happy to have a power system leadership that is encouraging us to continue to think outside of the box to serve the city of Los Angeles. This is one of the most exciting times to be working in power system. And I am so proud to represent transmission planning team. Thank you.
Whoa. I'm sorry, was the presentation in our board packet? Because I didn't see it. It was, okay. Yeah. Then I got to go back and download it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Wow.
Okay.
One comment.
I'm sorry, yes, Dr. Pickle.
These alternatives as presented would be transformative in terms of the impact on DWP and its supply options. They're addressing problems reaching supply that have been Southern California problems since at least the early 1980s. So the challenge is it's easy to draw a line on paper. It's putting in the wires and the concrete that's the real challenge.
Thank you for that. I was going to follow up in the same vein first to say that yet again, the work done by this group is absolutely excellent. And I too want to compliment the entire power system leadership for what's before us today, and also to underscore the quality of the and the necessity of the thinking, the strategic approach to long-range planning, and to be grateful for how well it sets us up for the next steps. The next steps being, of course, moving from concept and planning to actually implementation. And it's a huge leap forward for an agency to be this detailed, this comprehensive, and this qualitative in its planning. Mm-hmm. It is a revolution to go from planning to implementation absent a crisis. And I think that is our challenge. We can see the future. We know what needs to be done. It's pulling together the discipline, the resources, and taking all of the difficult steps that are necessary to harness a bureaucracy. And I'm not just talking about the department, I mean the entire municipal government bureaucracy, in a way that allows us to actually act on what we know is what will determine how successful we all are at this work. And so I want to encourage and insist that we begin to, in very specific ways, start to outline and articulate and take those next steps to ensure that when we look back 10, 15, 20 years from now, long after our tenure at this dais has passed, that we are looking at a successful implementation of what's been laid out before us. It is critical for the city. It's critical for the Western United States. And while we won't be here, young man, you will be. So I will be, sitting in a rocking chair somewhere, looking back and hoping to continue to be standing and applauding the work. But that is the critical piece that we have to begin to pay attention to. And that's where we are with so much of our work. Yes. The department has invested the resources, has the talent, and has demonstrated over and over, both as it relates to water and power, a capacity to vision where we need to be. And it is now really around marshaling both the resources and the will. And often it is the will that we've got to be vigilant about to execute. So very excellent presentation. I thank you.
Thank you.
I want to, I really appreciate, never could be as incredibly well-spoken as our president, but it's really so inspiring. Thank you. I know it takes also sort of the conversations between the two of you. And for me, this is very, it's just very to the point of the kind of work that we do as, and as professionals. And I will want to talk to you a little bit about, at some point, about your training. So as we do bring young people up in our professions, and also what programs you used, and if ESRI was involved. Because if they weren't involved, they'll be very interested in what you're doing. Large company in Redlands. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Very good job.
Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marty, you should be very
So-
proud.
Yes, Marty.
And indeed.
And Mr. Wilbur, I know that you're bursting, so we will move on to the minutes. We have, oh, I'm sorry, we have filed items. Are there any questions or comments regarding any of the filed items?
No.
All right, then moving to the minutes, we have K1 through K1, 2, and 3. And I would like to entertain a motion for the, yes,
Just before you do so, Julie, can you just clarify, please, what the change is here that, or what the clarification that's transpired that we can now go ahead and approve these?
Sure. The clarification is that Ms. Mitchell is a charter-recognized board secretary, and as other city departments and agencies do, you are entitled to rely upon her representation that these minutes are an accurate reflection of these meetings, even though you may not have attended the meeting. Other city commissions and departments also abide by this practice of allowing you to vote on the minutes.
So I could vote a 1 and 2 even though I was not present. Is that what
Yes.
you said?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Move approval of 1 through 3.
a second, would you call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ?
Aye.
Commissioner Lear?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific. We will now move to the items called special, starting with item L2. Commissioner Ruiz, are you looking for a presentation on that item?
No, I'm not looking for a presentation on this particular item, and I don't have a problem with it. My question is that we're being asked to approve a 5-year-old start date on this contract, and I just want to know why it took us 5 years to get before us. So this beginning on October 12, 2007, we're just now being asked to approve it, and that was just a little unusual for me to ask to act on something that started 5 years ago.
Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning, everyone. My name is Adriana Rubacava, Director of Real Estate, and I'm here to answer your questions. Originally, this was a 5-year agreement with Exxon, and you are correct. It expired in 2017. At that time, Exxon sold their property to the Torrance pipeline and continued to build the Department of Water and Power. Because it was a new owner, we were not able to make the payments, and therefore we had to enter into a new agreement. The Department Real Estate's office has gone through some turmoil times and a lack of staffing. There was a time prior to my arrival in May of 2020 where phone calls were not answered, emails and correspondence were not responded to, and they only focused on priority projects due to their staffing and other related issues. We were contacted in 2017, 2016, 2015 when they sold the property. There was no response. It came to my attention when I arrived in March of 2020. It was assigned, and this is basically, and I'm being factual. I don't want to make any excuses because no one returned the call and no one responded to the correspondence, to be perfectly honest. I assigned it to someone in September of 2020, and we are here now. A past practice that real estate had was to develop a 5-year license and turn it around really quick, because to come here to board with a 30-year license extends the process. But we are moving in the direction to have 30-year contracts because this agreement is needed by the power system for their Halldale receiving station to maintain and operate it. This is not a 5-year license. This is a lifetime partnership with this Torrance pipeline. So we are moving into creating 30-year licenses so we don't have to come to board and explain this. Unfortunately, I will be honest, this is not the first, and this is not the last that I've discovered in the 26 months that I've been there. So In the future, please, again, feel free, and we will be as transparent and provide you the information as to why we're here 5 years later.
Okay, so I trust that whatever issues happened 5 years ago, they're resolved. With that, I would like to move approval of this item.
Okay. And I will simply, my only question with respect to this item and what was just said is that it has all been reviewed by legal and signed off on as both appropriate, et cetera, both in terms of process and appropriate as it relates to process and form. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Can you just explain why 30 years?
I'm sorry.
Why 30 years?
Oh, because this is, because we will be needing this property for as long as we have right-of-way transmission in that area. So it's a right-of-way transition, for example, I don't have a photo here, so I apologize. It's a right-of-way transition, and we have a conduit to our receiving station in that location in Torrance, on Del Amo, and Normandy. And so we will need that agreement with that property because we need to cross, basically it's a crossing for our conduit to get to our receiving station. So as long as the receiving station is there, we will need this property.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. I'm sorry. Did someone make a motion on this?
I made a motion.
Okay, then I'll second.
Okay.
Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ? Aye. Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to item L4, and Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Yes.
Are you looking for a presentation on this item, or do you have questions?
I have questions.
Okay. So, terrific. There's someone here for this.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Peter Nguyen. I'm with FSO.
Great. So I'm trying to understand what we're trying to achieve. So is this an audit? Is this a contract that is for audits purposes? It's like an extra layer, seemingly, of self-policing that is expensive. And we have Dr. Pickle and his team, and then now we have we have an inspector general and the audit committee. So I'm just trying to understand, this is a lot of money for taking a look at ourselves again.
Yes, so these programs were established back in the early 2000s, shortly after the energy crisis. The natural gas, retail natural gas hedging program, the wholesale energy, and then years later, we deal with the environmental and the renewable energy credits. When the ordinances were established, that's one of the provisions in there, in all of them, that requires an independent third party to review, to ensure compliance, and assess the risk controls related to those programs. You're absolutely correct. Since then, we do have independent body like Dr. Pickle's office. It's certainly something we can revisit and go back to the CAO, see if they would be open to that. But something we have been doing since 2004 or 2005. Basically, every year we would have an independent firm come in and review and assess the programs.
Okay, so how do we undo that requirement? I mean, how do you, let's just assume for a second you have to have, we can figure out who is the best entity to perform it, but just take one step further back is why, how do you remove the requirement to have the independent?
That's why I'm not sure how, but certainly we can look into this and have a conversation with this. It's really down in City Hall,
So if it
whether
was,
they would be open to it.
If it was adopted by ordinance, was this part of a board action that then went to city council, or was this something that was initiated by the city?
Actually, this was initiated by the department. We were looking to hedge our natural gas. And to be honest, I think city leadership was concerned we'd be trying to, time the market. So they wanted an independent review as checks and balances.
Yeah, that's
So the ordinance requires us to have that third-party look. What we could do is reach out to the city CAO to see, would that also include Office of Public Accountability, who could do that service for the city?
Okay, that'd be great. And then,
Well, although I'm looking at Dr. Pickle, who's looking a little like, wait.
Having been through a number of cleanups of situations that went wrong, I think it's useful to have this, and it being done by a completely independent party, not the regular auditor. Maybe you have experience with these sorts of reviews being done for less, but in my experience, this is relatively inexpensive for the amount of detail associated with reviewing the trading operation.
you're getting to the cost of it.
Yes.
Which is important. I'm not questioning that, but there's a matter of how that gets paid for, whatever. But is this the right approach to getting this review? Should this review be done out of your office and you then get extra budget for it? I don't know. After this is received, what happens with it? What happens to this document?
So are we talking about the agreement?
No, after the review is completed.
After the work itself, not the agreement, but after the work is provided to the department, what happens?
What happens to the?
So after the review is completed on an annual basis, so upon completion of each year's review, as soon as we receive that report, it would, within 5 business days, it would be immediately distributed to the board members, city council, and the mayor's office. So that everybody would be aware in terms of the compliance with the Los Angeles Administrative Codes.
So this is then just a compliance, check the box exercise, not an actual review in which we thoughtfully are garnering information and acting upon it.
I think that the consultants look at what we're doing. Their first priority is to make sure we're in compliance with the ordinances. But then if they have new things that they want to educate us on, then the risk committee takes that into consideration, and we try to do some additional training or seeing, is there something operationally we could be doing more efficiently?
Okay.
So what they do, in addition to just compliance, they also look at our controls and compare it to best practices. And then they would advise us on certain issues, how we would handle it, or should be handled differently. And it's something that would involve the risk committee, and we'll discuss it and whether we can adopt those practices. And the reason for that to be important is because sometimes we need to see best practices, but at the same time, we also have to understand that we are not a trading shop. A lot of these best practices out there are for trading shops. We are more just for hedging and more of internal compliance with the ordinances.
Okay, is there some part of the contract which entitles us to get the presentation from the provider?
We could do that.
Yeah. Perhaps going forward for each one of, not perhaps, I would like in the audit committee to have this item covered and walked through by Siemens.
All right, we could do that.
Yeah, I think that, so to your point, and it's always useful to raise it, I think that the comment about it just being a compliance thing was, if you think about, what you identified as, we get it 5 days later, we distribute it to all these people, and then we go about our business. Honestly, most of the people that are on that distribution list are not. This document lands on their desk, and it's like putting it in a black hole. Nobody's read it. So.
And undoubtedly, you and I have gotten this already.
Right, exactly. I was going to say, we're sitting here and I'm thinking, well, this is not something I've read. And so the commissioner is seeking to identify, if it's something that we are doing, a way to have it handled so that it provides it's part of a more meaningful dashboard, and actually is a document that provides input that we are acting on. I assume the ratepayer advocate was part of that distribution list? Did I hear that or not?
Not the ratepayers advocate on the distribution list, but we certainly can provide.
And we get it and read it.
Yes, that I know.
You do get it already. They get it.
So I think to your point, Commissioner Neiman Brady, certainly this board and any member of the commission involved in a standing committee is entitled to determine what the dashboard is, what comes before that committee, or what comes before the board. And it probably would be useful to think about the tools that are being used as part of oversight of the department to better understand what those are. So that we're not just catching them in the context of contracts, so that we can take another pass at how and where we want to see information provided to the board, because there are things that just get lost in the volume of stuff that comes, shooting at us.
Understood.
And then as it relates to this being done by ordinance and who the principal contact is, it sounds like that's pretty much a done deal, that it's more of a how it's being used, not that it exists, but how it becomes meaningful. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
All right, then thank you for that. I appreciate it. Is there a motion on the table, or can I have a motion with respect to item L4?
So moved.
Second.
Would you take the roll, please?
Commissioner KATZ?
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner Neiman Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
We'll now go to L5. And again, Commissioner Neiman Brady, would you like a full presentation?
Yes.
Or would you? Okay.
Yes, please.
On L5.
On item 5, that is, there's not a presentation. This is the transfer to the city.
Okay.
For this fiscal year, we're planning to transfer $232,043,000. Under the city charter, the city transfer has to be above net income, and it can allow us to be greater than 66% of our assets under debt, and we've met those two requirements. And so we're requesting the board to approve the city to prepare an ordinance for the transfer.
Okay. Some of the questions that I was hoping might be answered were just reminders of the prior year transfers and how we are trending in terms of prior year transfers.
The transfer is actually trending a little lower than prior years. The department does not make any transfer on any of its 2016 revenues from that ordinance.
Okay.
Could you just be a little more, I think a little more background and context would be helpful. So if you could just step back a bit. I know we have a number and we have can we just sign off on moving a couple $100 million from BWP to the city of LA? But this is a public meeting and this is a public action and a significant item. So if you could provide for both the full board and also for the public a little more context about this particular action, how it relates to actions that we've taken in the past, and the authority under which we are taking this action, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it'll be useful.
Sorry.
So
There's someone here that can do that?
I think Ann could probably I'm Brian Stewart. I'm a deputy city attorney.
You can stand over there.
Want me to address it as well?
I think that levitates. It goes up. I'm not exactly sure.
Not far enough.
Can someone from our office
There it goes.
assist the podium? There you go.
It's coming.
There you go.
I think we reached the limit. You guys hear me okay?
Oh, you haven't been down quite as far, and yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. My name's Brian Stewart. I'm a deputy city attorney. I've been with the Department of Water and Power for about 12 years. Work with Ann a lot. The board letter kind of details some of the questions that you asked. This comes from City Charter Section 344. Essentially, I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but if you look in that section, essentially it's the area of the charter where funds that are sort of left over at the end of the year get swept to the general fund or the reserve fund of the city. And so because we're a proprietary department, obviously the way it works is a little bit different, but the charter defines what is a surplus, right? So we have a power revenue fund, which collects most of the revenues of the department. The charter defines what's a surplus. And the concept was, because the city sort of owns the municipal utility here, that they're entitled to sort of a rate of return on their investment in the utility. That's sort of the concept. And originally, the city helped fund some of the bonds to get the department started. And so it sort of has to do, there are a lot of cities and other government entities that get a transfer of funds from their utility. It's a very common practice, actually. And so what the Charter Section 344 allows is for the city to adopt an ordinance requesting a transfer of some surplus revenue from the Power Revenue Fund. That's the concept. Now, there was some controversy about the transfer a number of years ago. I think it was around 2010 or 2011. And Charter Section 344 was amended to kind of have more transparency. So that's why if you look in the board letter, there's sort of options for the board. You can approve sort of the full transfer, a partial transfer, or say we don't have any, we have surplus, but we can't transfer that to you at all. And so there's steps that would go through basically to allow the CAO and others to sort of analyze that, work with the board and work with the city, the department agency on whether or not that's appropriate. The transfer for a long time was actually done on water and power. I think the rate used to be sort of at 5% of the gross operating revenues of each of those funds in a particular year, subject to bond covenants, right? Because we have bonds that we issue, and so we have to comply with the contractual obligations that the department has. The charter actually specifies that as sort of a condition of the transfer. So that's why you can see in the attachment, they sort of do that calculation that's laid out in the master bond resolution. It was at 5% for a long time. Then the water transfer was stopped because of a lawsuit. And we started transferring 7% on power. Then it was 8% on power. And now it's sort of a combination. Again, there was a lawsuit related to the transfer. It's 8% on our 2008 ordinance and none on the incremental ordinance that was adopted in 2016. There's a slight variation with some of the revenues might be at a lower percentage because of the rate of return, but that gets calculated, I think, as an attachment in our financial statements, the specific amount. But
are you saying it is the lesser of 8% or surplus revenues? That are not needed for the obligations to meet?
We use well, Because
It's 8%.
of the lawsuit, it's a subtle, because of the lawsuit, it's sort of a subtle calculation. I can't lay it out exactly like that, but.
Somebody can, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we explain how you calculate it.
So basically what we do is we take the kilowatt hour sales of the power system, less purpose of enterprise, less commercial electric vehicle charging, because that's a new rate that was issued after the 2016 ordinance, and we multiply that by 12.628 cents, which is the rate before Proposition 26 was established. And that gives us $213 million. Then we look at the wholesale sales of the department, so 8% of that, and then revenue developed through our open access transmission charge. There's a return on equity of 5.35%. And so that is lower than 8%, so that's the maximum amount we can include in the transfer revenue. We don't include any transfer on unbilled sales or bad debt expense. It's basically true sales. So that is the calculation of the transfer under the settlement that we're under.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And that kind of is the definition of surplus revenue, right? I mean,
well, surplus,
that's how we define it, is that those percentages.
For the purposes of the transfer, yes.
Yes, I mean, there's a different definition for the department as a whole, since it doesn't include.
It may not be surplus like we think of surplus, but it's defined by those calculations, yeah.
What, two questions. What is the largest amount that has been transferred?
It's probably closer to 240 plus million.
Okay,
A
so
couple
not too
years
far
ago.
From this number. So not too
I think
far
I
from this
remember
number.
approximately maybe 255 or something like that.
I could
might
go
be the
back
highest.
and look at that.
But it's within, I mean, it's within 10% of this number.
It's always around this range, since the charter change and the loss of the water transfer, which was $25-30 million here historically. And then, but since then, and since the charter change, it's always been sitting around 240-ish plus or minus.
And it was projected to go to over 300 million in rate reviews before the litigation required that it be omitted from the incremental rate ordinance, like the incremental rate ordinance in 2012 and 2016.
Okay, that's very helpful. You know, you said it's a little bit lower than prior years. I imagine as our spending continues, we seem to be approving a lot of contracts. This will just continue to diminish. No?
Well, it will continue to diminish because more revenue will be derived from the 2016 and future
beyond.
ordinances, yes.
So is this something that will be contemplated in the next rate review? Is there something that can be contemplated in the next rate review, or?
To
try to support this number from diminishing?
No.
No.
So basically the one of the constraints that the department operates under with respect to rate reviews, with respect to rate design, is that this particular process is tied to our 2008 rate ordinance, and those ordinances that were passed after that date are not subject to, rates derived from those ordinances aren't subject to transfer. So as we move forward and continue to evolve and process rate reviews or rate ordinances, they will, of necessity, need to continue to be exempt. However, the 2008 ordinance continues to be woven in and to underpin our work. Likely, the best way, not likely, the most efficient way to manage the fully legitimate and appropriate transfer from this utility to the city general fund would be to have the transfer itself voted upon in a way or recognized in a way that decouples it from the need to be grandfathered in through the 2008 ordinance. And that certainly would make it more predictable, reliable, and flexible for the department and for the city as we move forward. That's an action that, as our leadership considers any number of other reforms, it may choose to consider with respect to the department in this action. Is that fair, sir?
Yeah, well, yes, exactly. The 2008 ordinance is grandfathered. It's also protected by statute of limitations. So the transfers is a component of that within the rates that are collected. And yes, the department would have more flexibility were it to sort of put the transfer to a vote and then design rates in a different way. Yes, if chosen. Yes.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions about this item?
Was Ann's explanation of the calculation sufficient? Because a number of factors go into that.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, just the magnitude and the importance of this item, I think, was just worth rehashing it all. So thank you.
Yes. All right. Do we have a motion on item L5?
So moved.
Second.
Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ? Aye. Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN-Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Aye.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
And then the final item we have for the open session is item L7, Commissioner Ruiz.
So I don't have any questions on this item. This item previously had come before us, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank staff. I had expressed some concerns. They addressed them, so I just wanted to thank staff for being responsive. And with that, I'd like to move the item.
Terrific. I'll second. Would you call the roll?
Commissioner KATZ? Aye. Commissioner LEHRER?
Aye.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN-Brady?
Aye.
Vice President RUIZ?
Vice President Ruiz.
Aye. Oh, sorry.
5 ayes, motion adopted.
Terrific, thank you. So with that, we have concluded our open session agenda. I will turn to council for the magic words that will allow us to go into closed session.
The board shall recess into closed session for a conference with legal counsel regarding the items listed in Section M of the agenda. The board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54957.1 of the California Government Code.
Thank you. We're going to utilize this room for closed session. So if we could clear the room and kill the mics. Also, it is 5 to 12. We've not taken a break, so why don't we break to 12:15 to give folks some time to get together for closed session. Thank you.